Alright, so in this second video then I'm going to be trying to explain this notion of existence simpliciter. So up there I've just written in the objection that we're looking at, which is about there being no substantive debate between presentists and eternalists. And the objection, as we've just seen in the previous video, is that exist means either of these two things: exist now, or that's the tenseless one, the tensed one, or existed, exists, or will exist, which is the tenseless version. And either way, the idea is there's no substantive debate between presentists and eternalists. Okay, so to introduce this next topic, we're going to have to go back and think a little bit about, so I'm going to introduce it in this way, this notion of the existential quantifier. So we're going to have to give you a little bit of a recap on what this means. Oh, by the way, I will ask this before I get started. I'm going to be using the board this week, like using my this drawing software, and I guess I'd like some feedback on you on whether this is better. I prefer doing it in this way. As I said, it gives me this sort of a freedom to explain things in a kind of more open manner. I can go where the thoughts take me rather than being set to what's on the slides. But I do wonder whether you prefer this or whether you prefer the standard PowerPoint slides. So let me know about that. I'll take your feedback. But okay, so we need a little bit of a recap on the notion. So suppose I have this claim: dinosaurs exist. So in standard logic, the idea here would be, well, dinosaurs is actually a property of things. So, you know, something can be a dinosaur. So let's draw a couple of them here. So this is one dinosaur. Oh gosh, there we go. Anyway, that's it's meant to be a dinosaur, not a very convincing one. Let's draw a different type of dinosaur. So this is one of like a diplodocus or something like that. So there's another dinosaur. Alright, these are both dinosaurs. So these both are dinosaurs, so they have the property of being a dinosaur. So remember that this is a property. Each one of these things is a dinosaur, means that it's got the property of being a dinosaur. Okay? So dinosaur is a property. So if you remember in logic, we understand properties. You can represent those. So if I put John is a dinosaur, John is a dinosaur, that is to attribute the property of being a dinosaur to John. In logic, we symbolize objects, things that have properties, with small letters, and properties in this case we'll use a big D to represent the property of being a dinosaur, and this then gets reversed and we write it like that. That, on this interpretation, means that A, which is John, has the property D of being a dinosaur. Okay? But we don't just say things like John is a dinosaur, we can make general claims such as dinosaurs exist. And the standard way of understanding what this means then is to say, well, what we're saying is there is an X, so this means there exists something X such that X is a dinosaur. Okay? That's what we mean when we say dinosaurs exist. And really the response is to say, look, when we understand the notion, that we can understand the notion of existence as meaning neither this nor this, but actually in terms of this existential quantifier, where this quantifier is understood as being absolutely unrestricted. So I'm now going to have to explain a bit about what we mean by absolutely unrestricted. And here the thought is, sometimes when we make existence claims, we restrict what's called the domain of the quantifier. So, okay, what's the quantifier? So a domain is thought to be some sort of realm of objects. So imagine all these crosses represent things. So these might just be things on Earth or something. And when I say aliens do not exist, well, no, let's make a claim first of all. Let's suppose that we've got a dog. So D, okay, use that before dinosaur. Anyway, D now stands for the property of being a dog. So D equals being a dog. So here we've got a dog, here we've got a cat. C equals being a cat. So imagine this is a schematic representation of everything that's on Earth. There's a dog, there's a cat, there's a human, there's another dog, there's another cat or something. Now, if I now say cats exist, then we do that. There is an x such that, oops, that's an x there. There is an x such that x is a cat. The thought is, well, okay, this says there exists, but what we might be doing is restricting our domain of quantification to the Earth, right? So this really says something like there is an x such, so we can just put it down within the domain of the Earth, that is, within this domain of quantification, there is something which is a cat, and this will turn out to be true because here within the domain of quantification there is indeed something which is a cat. Okay? But now let's suppose I make a further claim and I say something like aliens do not exist. Do not exist. Now, one way of understanding that claim is, well, it's a negative existential. It's not the case that there is an x such that, let's use A for aliens, x is an alien, and I might be intending to restrict my domain of quantification to the Earth again and say, look, within the domain of quantification, within the Earth, there is nothing here that is an alien, and that would turn out to be true if I'm implicitly, because often we do implicitly restrict what we're talking about, the domain of quantification, to a particular realm, we might think about it, and that would be true. But if I make the claim, I can also make the claim completely unrestrictedly and say it's not the case that there is an x such that x is an alien, and there it's not so clear that it is true because there we have to expand the domain of quantification beyond the Earth to include everything that there is, and in that case there might be, now I've got this extended domain, there might be an alien up there somewhere. So I'm going to say this again in another perhaps more plausible example. So let's get rid of all of this. I don't want to delete the objection at the top. I'll tell you what, let's do it like this. So okay, let's give an account of restricted quantification. So this is a case. I go to the fridge. Here's the fridge. I open up the fridge. I look inside at the shelves, and there's a lettuce there. There's a joint of beef or something, and I say, there is no beer. So, disappointedly, I say there is no beer. Okay, when I say there is no beer, that's an existential claim. I'm saying, in effect, there is no beer. So if I say, you can say there is no dinosaurs, there is no aliens, or there are no aliens, but there is no beer means it's not the case that there exists any beer. In other words, it says it's not the case that there is an x such that x is beer. And okay, obviously when I say that, or when I use this phrase, I'm not intending to assert that there is no beer anywhere in the world. When I say there is no beer, I don't mean nowhere does there exist beer. What I mean is there is no beer in the fridge. And the point being is I don't explicitly have to do that. When I open the fridge and look in it, I don't have to say, there's no beer, and by the way I mean in the fridge, because it's implicit in the context of the situation. When I'm looking in the fridge, it's implicit that my domain of quantification, so let's draw it out, is just the stuff that's in the fridge. So I put all the things there, and there's some lettuce, there's a joint of whatever, beef, or let's say pork, pea, and so on. There's stuff in the fridge, but out of all the things that there are in the fridge, it's not the case that there is any beer. So really, this is going to be understood as being restricted quantification. I'm quantifying over what's in the fridge, and I'm saying it's not the case that there is anything in the fridge that is beer. Okay? So there's perhaps a more plausible example of restricted quantification, or a more everyday example of restricted quantification. So alright, we've got this idea then that we can restrict our quantification. Sometimes we do it implicitly, for example, in the case when I say there is no beer. But also we can understand this quantification as being unrestricted. So we can, that is, say, look, I now want to say I'm not restricting my quantifiers. I'm talking about absolutely everything that there is, right? And that is meant to be the idea of what gets called existence simpliciter. Simpliciter is absolutely unrestricted quantification. Unrestricted quantification. Okay? So existence simpliciter is where we're making an existential claim, a quantified claim, and we explicitly mean to say that the quantification we're making is completely unrestricted. We're not trying to look at one aspect of reality. We're throwing our quantifiers wide open, as they say, and attempting to cover everything that there is in the entire universe. Okay, so now let's return to our this objection. So here again, the point being now that this is supposed to give us another way of understanding the notion of existence. It's in the logical way, where we understand existence simpliciter to mean quantification over everything that there possibly is, or everything, yeah, no restriction. So then let's go back to our claim. Dinosaurs exist, and now we understand this as simpliciter. So I'll just put that subscript simpliciter like that. So this is neither to be understood as tensed nor as this kind of tenseless way, but which still incorporates all the tenses. It's now to be understood simply in terms of quantifiers thrown wide open, unrestricted existence claim. Okay. So now the thought is, aha, finally then we've got this meaning according to which the presentist will disagree with this. They will think, no, it's not true that dinosaurs exist simpliciter, and the eternalist will agree that it's true that dinosaurs exist simpliciter because they exist in the past. Okay, that's the thought. I'm not sure what you make of this. It's a standard line. I wonder whether it makes sense to you, but that's the standard line. I'm going to say a little bit more about this notion before I finish with this video. So the thing that I want to say, and this will lead into some more material that we're now going to think about, although I'm unsure about the order of presentation. We'll have a see. So, okay, the extra thing that I want to say about this then is we can understand eternalism as saying, okay, so if we ask the person on the street, do dinosaurs exist? Oh, I've just rubbed that out, haven't I? But we ask somebody, so call this, well, that's our star. We say, is star true? So we ask the man on the Clapham omnibus, as is often put, the person who hasn't done any philosophy, something of an insult, I suppose, to ordinary people. But anyway, you know, we ask an ordinary person. In fact, we probably shouldn't even call them ordinary, should we? I mean, it's not like philosophers are extraordinary. Anyway, you get the idea. If you ask somebody randomly whether dinosaurs exist is true, they're going to say, I think, no. Maybe they wouldn't shout it at you like that. They'd probably just look at you like you were mad. But anyway, if you pushed them, they would say, no, it's not true that dinosaurs exist. And the eternalist response to this then is to say, well, that's because we normally hear exists as tensed. And the way of understanding tense on their view is to say, well, what you are doing is you are restricting your domain of quantification to the present moment. So normally when we hear this term exist, what we mean is something like there is an X. Restricting our domain of quantification to the present moment such that X is a dinosaur, right? And of course eternalists are going to say, yeah, of course, that's false. It's not true that within the present dinosaurs exist. So the thought is, ordinarily we understand exist when we hear it as being restricted to the present moment. This is why people say no, because they're restricting their domain of quantification to the present moment. And of course the eternalists are going to say, well, what is true is this, that if we in fact think about restrict our domain of quantification now to the past, then it's true that dinosaurs exist, and indeed that X exists in the past entails, according to the eternalist, that X exists simpliciter, right? Because what exists in the past in the restricted domain of quantification, of course, is going to exist in the unrestricted domain of quantification, right? So, okay, the presentist has got the eternalist has got some sort of explanation of why we'd ordinarily reject a statement like that as being true, because they say we understand it as being restricted to the present. But in fact, if we restrict the domain to the past, then it's true that dinosaurs exist, and that entails that they exist simpliciter, i.e. if we throw our quantifiers wide open, they exist, namely within the past. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to say about this, except for one last point. Let's rub this out again, and this time let's consider this idea that we've just had there. So the idea here is that the sentence, in fact we can understand tense sentences now, dinosaurs existed. The eternalist then will understand this sentence as being an example of restricted quantification, restricted to the past. That's what they're going to understand the tensed term as meaning. Dinosaurs existed means that there exists in the past, so restricting our domain of quantification to the past, a dinosaur, and as we've just seen, this then entails there exists simpliciter dinosaurs. Okay, so that is to say, the eternalist can understand tensed speak as being a restriction of our quantifiers to a particular domain, in this case the domain of the past, but of course that entails that dinosaurs exist simpliciter. Now, here's the key point that I want to make. Presentists deny this. So with this, I'll just put an arrow. Presentists deny this. So they want to say that dinosaurs do not exist simpliciter. If we throw our quantifiers wide open, the only things that can be said to exist are the things in the present. There are no things in the past. So even thrown wide open, they deny this. And that means that they can't understand this sentence, dinosaur existed, in this way. Because if they did understand it in this way, it entails that which they deny. So because they deny that, they must deny that that's what we mean when we say that dinosaurs existed. Okay. Hopefully you're sort of following the idea here. And the major question that we've got to ask then is, okay, if presentists understand dinosaurs existed as meaning this, and presentists can't understand dinosaurs existed as meaning this, how do presentists understand the claim dinosaurs existed? And I'm going to return to that, so it's a little puzzle. I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll do it like this. Maybe I will talk about that now, but I'll give the next video as being a kind of an optional one. So if you're interested in pursuing this idea about existence, simpliciter and so on further, then watch the next video when I'm going to talk a bit about this idea a bit further. But if you don't like this kind of technical stuff, if you're not really interested in it, you will be okay to skip the next video and go straight on to the one after, where I'm going to be introducing something which you do need to know about, which is the truth maker objection to presentism. So okay, just to summarise where we've got to, So far, all I've done then, I've introduced this problem with understanding the debate between presentist and eternalist, understood in terms of these two ways of understanding the notion of existence, which seem to suggest that the debates are non-substantive. I've now given the standard reply, which appeals to the notion of a quantifier and the idea that we can quantify over things unrestrictedly, which gets termed existence simpliciter. And that kind of solves the problem. Yeah, and I'm going to say a bit more about that in the next video. But if you're kind of not really into this bit of what we're talking about, please feel free to skip the next video and go to the fourth video of this week. Okay, so next video I'll talk more about this, and then I'll turn to the truth maker objection, which everybody should watch. Thanks.